Welcome to Tales from the Golden Imp. I am Joe Craig, the Impish Skald. Our story continues in Malatin. The sleepy little town had its celebration disrupted by a goblin raid. This raid itself was structured and ordered and led by a goblin with glowing purple eyes. This is a symptom that some of the beasts showed during the time of Callisto, but what does it mean? We will pick up the story as the damages are being assessed, and the true depth of this attack is being determined. This continuation of the Calmbringer cycle. Welcome to Tales from the Golden Imp. Episode 2, Whispers of the Past. Sun's first light pierced the morning sky as the Bucket Brigade finished its work. Soot covered the face of the man that was called Lord Ethan Eldos, his blonde hair having grown darker over the years with streaks of white in it. His face weathered by the intense wind and cold, his hands covered in the grime that showed that he was not above his people. For a day that started with a great speech, it surely had ended poorly. Lord Eldos knew the heart of the city was intact, and they hadn't lost much, but what they had lost was considerable to say the least. The sanctity of safety could not be easily replaced. It wasn't the city center that he was concerned about now. It was the farms and the businesses that were to the north of the town. He was worried about Durin and his smithy, the farms between Godric's Pass and Malatin, the grain silos and the mines. Heavy was head that wore the crown. Then there was this goblin Slagg that they had managed to capture. What could be gleaned from it? What could it have to say for itself in the motivations of its tribe that set down on Malatin? So many questions, but so little time to save the weak and the wounded. Lord Eldos had dispatched some of the troops that he could part ways with and sent them this way and that to ascertain the fate of such places. Jaina, for one, was most eager to check out the fate of this Durin Longbeard. It was long past the end of her duties, so he wasn't going to argue with her. Not that it would do a lot of good anyway. The girl was headstrong, and it was a weakness that he worried about. Though the Legion of War Priests were not under the authority of the Lord of Malatin, they still respected his requests. They were the elite force that could be called to bear upon any threat of the city. Long ago, it was decided that Malatin would host the outpost. And this outpost consisted of war priests and priests, and Lord Eldos was ever thankful to have them. It was often questioned why here in this sleepy little village. The truth was one of convenience. Malatin was at the crossroads between many of the mountain cities and had a well-kept road to Durg. It was strategic. Malatin could police much of the Dragontooth Mountains by rule of geography alone. And so it was. The outpost was placed here. High Priest Dole Karish had been leading the priests in tending the wounds and healing those that could be healed. They had lost lives this night, and many of them Lord Eldos still saw as children. One such face was that of Olwen Ver, the granddaughter of Beatty and Moldus. Ethan remembered her just as a girl, as if it were yesterday. One of the city guards were truly smitten on the girl, and he swore he would see several children spring forth from the pair. Alas, that would not be the case now. Necropus Keeper. What a horrible calming day. This supposed 300-year anniversary of the defeat of one of the most notorious tyrants that Calidria has ever known. Callisto used beasts, men, and everything in between as part of his armies, controlling the minds of those that could not be controlled with a gilded tongue. The madman nearly gained control of all of Calidria. All but Edius had fallen or bent the knee to this monstrosity. He and his sentinels were, as far as Eldos was concerned, the worst thing to ever live or breathe on the soil of Calidria. Goblins with purple eyes. Rumors of the past that the beast of Callisto used to have these eyes. Lord Eldos always thought that was a myth, but hearing the reports of such a thing happening to a goblin here, what did it mean? as the seat of the Council of Eldos for the Dragon-Tooth Mountains, he had to have answers and be willing to do what must be done to get them. Eldos replayed the reports in his mind, trying to keep the facts straight. He would have to talk with his miner, Dandros, again. Such little time they had before he ran off with Jaina. But the bigger question for him was these two outsiders that threw themselves into the fray and continued on with Jaina. This Regos Malbroach, Meg Nevarro. They owed this town nothing. From all accounts, they had just arrived earlier in the day. They didn't fight the goblin horde so strongly. His questions for them would be very different. That would have to wait, of course. Here and now, Lord Eldos had to get the toll of the dead, determine the physical damages, and see what failed in the processes to keep the city safe from such actions. And he had to know the fate of the two northern silos. Winter was expected to be harsh this year, much like every year. And it was harvest time. Much of the grain had already been collected. He could only hope that they remained intact. From what he knew of goblins, they abhorred the grain and would only eat it if their lives truly are at risk, but they would burn it. And if this was the beginning to a campaign, they certainly would. Lord Eldos had been putting it off, but he knew now was the time to question this Slagg. Important enough of a goblin to lead the vanguard. He had to know something. Getting it out of him was the tricky bit. With luck, High Priest Dole Karish offered his services to aid. They would be finishing up this ritualistic effect to create an area where Karish would know if a lie was told. That would help for sure. No sooner than the thought crossed his mind did he hear Nathaniel call. "Lord Eldos, they're ready for you now." My, how much older Nathaniel looked today when compared to that youthful vigor of yesterday. Well, no more time for musings of an old man. Questions had to be asked, answers had to be given, and Slagg awaited him. Eldos gave a wave to Nathaniel and turned to the longhouse that served as his seat of power here in Malatin. The flag of his house flying by the door, ice blue with a silver boar. The clan Eldos had rooted around in the muck and the mire to survive back in the day, and they bore the boar as their symbol since. His family had always been close to the seat of power in Malatin, going all the way back to the start of the city itself. That simple trading post had come far since those days. Entering the longhouse, he ended his musings with a thought of concern to his neighbors to the north in Chunda. But the relationship was frosty at the best of times, entering a glowing blue circle that Lord Eldos knew well. "Truth will now be spoken, not lies or oaths broken. Do you understand what this means, Slagg?" Not slowing to look at the fell beast, Lord Eldos took his seat. "Slagg understand foul speech of man. So much better for the lying." The bound goblin, looking broken and defeated, seemed ready to speak. But the spell was surging, binding each member of the circle to that of truth. The spell had a spark to it that would nudge the truth from you just a bit more than you would normally agree to. Eldos hated using the spell, but this was a just cause. "Good. I am Lord Ethan Eldos of Malatin. You attacked my home last night, and fought with some due amount of honor. It took skill to get yourselves so close to the heart of the city. My question is, why?" "Slagg no speak. Would rather die by the hands of men than by hands of Callisto." Now that got a stir. Goblins actively afraid of Callisto? He was 300 years in the ground. "Truth are at the heart of his words," spoke the High Priest Karish in a slow, stoic tone. The magic, too, was washing over him. "You fear the dead so much more than the living." "Fear dead, yes,
But Callisto more. He no dead man.
He speaks truth from his vantage point.
Slagg course speak truth. Goblin tongue no twisty like human. Best liars all have round ears. Callisto no dead. Never dead. Callisto never die.
Involuntarily, Karish spit on the floor at such a claim. Callisto was a name so foul that it was customary to spit it out of your mouth before it could be rested upon your tongue. He speaks truth. Who ordered you to attack Malatin?
No want answer.
Slagg wrestled with his mind a bit to keep from saying the words that came to the forefront of his thoughts. It was as if the magic was forcing the answer out. Beads of sweat formed all over the head of Slagg. He resisted greatly.
Would rather die than answer.
The magic was not painful, or so the priest had said, but they never stated it was comfortable. Who ordered you to attack Malatin? Resisting the urge to speak, the goblin twisted in his restraints, grinding his teeth so hard it could be heard across the room. The magic wore on him until he broke and spoke.
Skald ordered the attack.
Your Skald ordered the attack? What would your storyteller want with such a thing? And why would you listen to them?
Not Mikisha. The Skald with purple eyes. The mad woman. Callisto's Skald.
In stunned silence, the only other word that was spoken was truth. Heartbeats passed before another word was spoken. The panting of the goblin Slagg laying on the floor, looking even more defeated than before. Weak and broken, the goblin began to weep.
We dug her up. She and Goblin home. Special jar placed over Chundo woman. Skald woke up in Chundo woman. Skald ordered attack. Death, please. I am too weak to walk in Kalen light. Shall now know only darkness of the dead one. Death, please.
Lord Eldos, he believes it to be true. Every word that he has spoke just now rang of truth. No pull of deceit, no foul words other than the words we heard. This cannot be true, but a goblin speaking of Callisto and Skald is ill news regardless of the truth that is veiled beyond this creature's eyes. They are dead. They are defeated. With near desperation for the truth to be the truth of his words, High Priest Karish could feel doubt creeping into the corners of his mind. How he longed for these words to be true, but this creature was convinced that Skald had returned, and with her came the others. She was but one of the sentinels. There were 4. Earlier that day, the sun was not yet up when Jaina and her crew arrived to the site of Durin's smithy. Morris had done what he could to contain the flames and managed to save some of the evidence of what had transpired. He was well underway to examining the tracks and the blood that was left. "Morris, what do you have for us so far?" Jaina called out.
Durin's not here, but he didn't go without a fight. He took out at least 6 goblins and wounded what I suspect to be a few more. A lot of tools that he carried are gone, especially those digging tools. All of his smithing tools are also gone, as well as his big anvil that he worked with. That being said, I found goblin blood, dwarf blood, and troll blood. Durin made good use of his old axe he kept above the counter. Tracks-wise, the goblins had a wagon that they used to haul the stuff from the shop. Wagon tracks head north, but that's expected.
Well, glad there weren't trolls in the commons. Things may have gone a bit differently had they been there, Regos said while lighting his pipe, still looking rough from the fight, but trying to be in good spirits. The crew that came with Jaina were Regos, Meg, and Dandros, along with a couple city guards. Jaina introduced everyone and they got to work. First, they went over to what Maris had found. Then, they dug a little deeper. Dandros was fast friends with Durin and frequented his shop often. From his eyes, he agreed many of the tools were missing. The hammer he carried, he purchased just yesterday, and Durin had a full stock. The town didn't have much use for weapons more than bows. And then there were the tools of the guards and the followers of Halis used. To be honest, most of them were ceremonial at this point. Durin didn't keep a stock of weapons aside from knives and daggers. Tools were what he sold most of, those and traps. The fur trade was strong in these parts, for those hardy enough to partake, yet all the small traps remained hanging. No worse from wear from the fire that burnt most of the roof and one of the back walls. The fire had started from an oil lamp, it had seemed. The shop's thatched roof burnt quickly, but the smithy's shop was mostly stonework, so much of the building still stood. Meg and the others spread out and noticed that Durin wasn't the only living being that was missing from the homestead. Durin's donkey Festus was also missing, along with the coal wagon that had its wide wheels. A large amount of coal was missing as well. All odd things for goblins to steal. If a goblin couldn't use it immediately, they typically didn't bother with it. What was more troubling for Dandros and Maris was the amount of dwarven blood there was. While discussing this with Jaina, they all came to the conclusion that Durin would need medical attention if he were to survive the wounds that they suspected he sustained. And they did not trust goblin medicine for the appropriate repairs. Meg spoke up at this point, having been quiet most of the time as she looked over things. Listen, I'm an outsider here, but I was drawn here for a purpose. I feel as if I might be of some need. I may need to be involved here. However, crawling into a goblin nest is not my idea of a good evening. I agree this Durin fellow needs looking after, and he means a lot to you folks. But we will need some military force to aid us if we go in too loud. Regos is a quiet lad when he wants to be, and I'm pretty stealthy as well. And the big guy over there is light on his feet, and has the skills needed to be quiet. But you two, waving over to Dandros and Jaina. Beg my pardon, but you don't seem to be the stealthy types. Agreed. With that said, why don't we go with the big guy here and see what we can get ahead of these wagons. The way these carts are loaded, and the way this force is rolling, weighed down as they are, they won't be moving fast. We can likely get ahead of them. And then, that's when Jaina interrupted. Then what? You'll fight that horde all on your own? I think not. No, I'm not the quiet type, never been the quiet type, but I'm not going to put the three of you in harm's way. Besides, we don't know what information Lord Eldos has gleaned from the goblin we captured. Even more reason for you to report back. You have your orders as such. I never played nice with those rules that you play by. I'm heading north and will travel with whoever can keep up. Dandros spoke then. We need someone to report back for sure, but I'm not going to leave Durin to goblin machinations. I'm about the only family that dwarf has these days. I'm heading north with Morris. I'm good in the dark and underground. And if it comes to caves, you'll need me. Regos pats Jaina on the shoulder. Sounds settled to me. Jaina, you report in what we figured out. Get us some support while we place sabotage and stop these wagons from reaching whatever hole these goblins are going towards. We'll need you and your troops to get us out of the frying pan when we inevitably end up in it. Jaina turning on Regos and turning a bit red in the face. I won't be dismissed like this. I have the guards that can throw a report back for us. I'll come too. And if we end up needing to be quiet, I'll step aside then. But until then, you're not going anywhere without me. I follow the light of Halis in order to defend life. Besides, I don't think any of you know the healing arts at all, and I barely do. Dandros laughed. Well, Jaina, you ain't the only pious one around here. Praise Belden. With his blessing, I can provide the healing hand as well. But lads and ladies, I hate to say this, but I don't think any of us save Maris are in any condition to go off trampling in our current condition. We all need rest. We don't have time for rest. We'll have to rest in Necropus's loving arms if we are to get rest before Moon shows herself again. With that said, he lifted his pack off the ground. Putting it on his back, he started to head off to the north. Regos laughed and followed suit. Jaina, now furious, pointed to the guards that were with them. Listen up, you two. You two are going to report in to Lord Eldos and let him know that we have set off to pursue these goblins that have Durin, and we will need the aid of forces from the temple as well as forces that he can muster. We don't know how big of a hive we are stepping in. By this time, the others had ran to catch up with Maris, leaving Jaina behind. Thank you, Tomlin. Thank you, Jacob. Consider the next round at the Golden Imp on me! As she ran off to catch up, half-plate clinking as she ran. Back in Malatin, the reports were coming in and the news had Lord Eldos' face in a sour expression. To the south, things were fine, thank the gods. But that's where the good news ended, however. The group of miners that Dandros is a part of were missing, and it looked to be abducted from the iron mines. Dandros would have likely been with them if he hadn't gotten injured, which sent him into town early. The grain silos that housed the town's wheat and barley were emptied out, carts stolen, and what couldn't be taken was burnt. The same was true for the corn silos. And then there were the farms that he was so worried about. Out of the 7 farms, out in that direction, 4 of them were missing people, tools, and beasts of burden. The other 3 remained untouched. That brought the total of the dead up to 27, and the missing up to 36. If all were lost, that would be 1/10 of the city gone in a day. That was a hard blow that he could not let stand. This attack started as soon as the sun was swallowed by the Dragontooth Mountains from the looks of things. The 3 farms that were farthest away from the main road were tucked out of the way, and it put them out of the way of the raid. How would they survive winter now? More so, how are they going to get these people back alive? Jaina and Dandros were not back yet either. Still awaiting their report, Ethan met with the Justicar, Parthis Morsh. He would need the help of the temple, and this was why the temple was here in the first place. Parthis had been gathering reports as well. Well, old man, what do you have? Any good news? We seem to be light on the subject right now. Parthis greeted Lord Eldos as he came in. Haven't gathered all the reports yet, but we have enough to get started with. Jaina and Dandros haven't returned with those 2 out-of-towners yet, but the rest are in. Good news? Well, all the good news is to the south. Well, that aside from the Tompkins, the Drury, and the All Thor farms, which were spared the carnage, thankfully. Lord Eldos took a seat and began to break down the reports. After Eldos was finished, Morsh began to fill him in on the rest. By the counts of our soldiers, we were hit by 3 squads of around 100 goblins in each squad. There seemed to be a few larger beasts in the mix as well. Not sure as to what beasts they were, but these goblins needed some help to get away with some of the things that they managed. How many soldiers can you muster these days? Eldos laughed a bit. Soldiers? If you can count my guards as soldiers, that's around 26 that'd be good enough condition to march. Beyond that, I can get us about 50 more fighting men. But they aren't soldiers. We haven't had the need for soldiers in 300 years. I don't even know if we can arm the 50 more men aside from what the temple can provide. What say you? What are your numbers like these days? 76. That's more than I thought you could come up with. The temple has 24 war priests and 16 priests that we could deploy. But that will leave the barracks empty. We have weapons to help you arm those 50. I know the townsfolk are eager to strike back, but we need to make sure that they know that this needs to be controlled. At best, we'll be outnumbered 3 to 1 without some aid. I've sent riders to the south, to the Great Falls Forest, to see if the elves come to our aid. I have another rider ready to ride once we gather our full report, to go out to the nearest temples and gather up some more forces. But like you, our numbers are down with the amount of safety that the calm was provided. Our temple is the largest in the region. You have to go to Caverns, Eldos City, or Geldstein to get larger numbers. Eldos City and Geldstein, well, they're too far away to offer any aid, and Caverns would be a week ride to get a rider out there, and then 2 weeks march back. We'll have to start this campaign, old friend, ourselves. About that time, the 2 guards that had traveled with Jaina arrived with the rest of the reports. The fate of Durin Longbeard and his goods seemed to be the icing on the cake. That headstrong girl, she's going to get herself killed and those fools with her. Well, the campaign has begun. We can't let them try this alone. They're expecting aid to be waiting for them. I think we have our reports. Send your riders. Let's get this march organized. Headstrong? That's not exactly the words I'd have for her. Her skills in combat have made her a bit overconfident, and her zeal has led her straight to the hornet's nest, Morsh said as he began to pen the letters that were to be delivered. Lord Eldos did the same. Riders were gathered and dispatched with their call to aid. The 2 aging men carried with them grim expressions. They feared a day like today, but neither of them believed that they would see it in their lifetimes. How many more will lay dead after this? Not that it mattered truly. The town would fight. They would not let this go unanswered. They had to be smart about it, though. Those that already saw battle will need a few hours rest before they can march, and time was not on their side. Today in the Lore Corner, we discuss one of the deities of the realm, and we'll start with Lady Halis. Halis is seen as the defender of life, and legend states long ago in the Age of Enlightenment, her home of Geldstein was attacked, and her father was not strong enough to defend the attackers. As Kalen and his minions were destroying her town, it was then that she took up her father's glaive and fought to defend her town. This is recorded in the Battle of Halis, which occurred on the 22nd of Gladebrook, 2442 before Calm, and that is recorded here. Kalen arrived at Geldstein with his war fleet and with the purpose of a 2-front battle. Forces from land were crossing from Slagg to Eldos City, and from the sea raging through Geldstein. Kalen's forces hit like hammers strike steel upon the shore of the city of Geldstein. The military forces of Eldos and the war priests from Elgis' temple met them blow for blow. But the might of Kalen was too much. Kalen arrived upon the shore minutes after the first ship hit shore. Kaelin cut a foothold in the city docks and forced the defending forces back. His target was set on this one temple that had been such a thorn in his side. None would stand before Kaelin, especially a single temple. The vanguard cut a path for their lord to the temple. They could not breach the defenses, however. Kaelin took it upon himself to open the way. Pulling forth the energy and the might that he held, Kaelin launched a lance of flame that melted the doors of the temple. However, it was only the door that was destroyed. To his anger, there was a unit of Eldos war priests locking shields, with priests at their back praying over them. They should have been destroyed, but yet here they remained. The vanguard crashed into these forces, but the priests of Eldos pushed back the attackers. From the back, a grizzled man shouted, "So long as the heart of Eldos remains pure, no evil shall step foot here. I defy you, Kaelin. We defy you, Kaelin. You have no place here. By the blessings bestowed upon this temple and each priest that walks here, we rebuke you." This gray-haired human male was Huldren, the father of Halis. Glaive in hand, he was ready to fight and ready to die for his god. The forces of Eldos began to glow with a radiance so bright that the attackers had to shield their eyes. This was the moment that the vanguard of Kaelin was broken, as the small force began to battle the larger force. Kaelin had one soldier in sight. How dare a mere mortal speak to him in such a way? Did he not realize that he was addressing a god? As the god of destruction pushed forward towards the temple's threshold, a young war priest in training held her spear at the ready, fear gripping her. She had faith in her father and the blessings he held. Halis looked ready to join the fight if she must. Kaelin and Huldren began single combat, a combat that Huldren would not win. Kaelin was too strong. The divinity which he carried was too powerful. To Halis, it seemed a final hammer blow took an hour to land. She knew before the hammer made contact with her father that he would not survive. One phrase came to mind, her father's words that he said to her daily. "Life is sacred. Defend it always." As her father hit the ground, the shock took her and she froze. Kaelin's forces were now entering the temple. Halis from the inner sanctuary began to repeat her father's words to shake herself free from the shock of seeing her father fall in battle. Practiced spear in hand, she moved to the offensive, fighting her way to her father's body and to the glaive that was there. The spear broke by the second attacker, and by the third, she had pushed her way to her father's side. Taking up her father's glaive, she set her eyes on Kaelin. Not in anger, though she was angry. Not out of spite, though she wanted. No, she set her eyes upon Kaelin out of duty and purpose. She must defend life. She must stop the killing, even if it meant to kill. It was one tenet of Eldos worship that she could not understand. If all life was sacred, how could you not use deadly force to stop someone who was doing what Kaelin was doing now? It was a tenet that she could not abide. Halis began to move forward, battling any that stood in her way. She had to kill this enemy, for she knew that he would not stop killing. Battling her way through the crowd of combatants on her way to this enemy, Kaelin stepped back and watched this woman with a smile across his face. Halis managed to fight her way all the way to the god of destruction himself. As she stood in front of this god, knowing full well what she was facing, she was unafraid. Kaelin then asked her a question. "You fight with such fervor and destroy so well. Why do you not fight with me instead of bowing to a god that has failed you?" Her response: For all life is sacred, and those that take life without care should forfeit their own life. So I have come to take your life from you." With that, she attacked, and the attack drew the blood of the god. But as the blood touched her skin, a curse began to take hold. Kaelin laughing, "You fool! Even now you die. There is nothing more powerful than I. Now you die." "You are wrong. Life is far more powerful, and you may take my life, but you will not keep it." Those were to be her dying words. Halis' body began to burn from the inside out, her corpse laying before the god Kaelin, but this divine glow remained. All who stood against Kaelin heard Halis' voice. "Life is sacred. Defend it always. Defend it now." Her words held weight. The soldiers rallied behind them. Shields began to glow once more with the light that was not that of the dead god Eldos. No, this was another light. This was golden, where Elgos' blessing has always been the purest of white. The weapons of the defending army too began to shine with this light. Each sword stroke, each arrow, each glaive hit hard, as if it had the weight of a god behind it. Though outnumbered, they had been pushed around the battlefield easily before this. A martyr made and a blessing given. Life proved to be stronger. The forces of Geldstein beat back at the attacking army. They drove them back to their ships and forced Kaelin to retreat. Life was defended. As the sun rose the next morning, a light gathered around the corpse of Halis. She returned to life, but was changed. No longer a human. No longer was she mortal. She died a human and rose a god. A herald of the worms announced to all that were witness, "Behold, she stands before you, those that have been chosen. A new god of life, born from the divine essence of the old. As the phoenix rises from the ashes, so too does life. Salander named this one Defender of Life. All life is sacred. Defend it always." With that, Halis stood, bathed in the sunlight, and faded into the ether, crossing planes into the realm of the gods, with the herald at her side. This event is recalled as the Battle of Halis. Now, Halis has always been seen and portrayed as a human female wearing field plate armor with a blue surcoat. The blue surcoat containing a golden tower on her chest. She is always with a glaive in one hand and the sun in the other. Golden hair with a golden tan and silver eyes. Her code and ethic for those that worship her. Life is sacred. Defend it always. Defend those that cannot defend themselves. And the best serving is giving them the tools needed to defend themselves. Those that take life without care do not care for their own life, so their life is forfeit already. Those without swords die upon them easily. Heal the sick, the weak, and the wayward. Halis blesses those she has chosen, so they too may choose whom they are to bless. And finally, the darker the heart, the more susceptible to the light. Her colors are blue, silver, and gold, and her symbol is a golden tower with a silver and blue flag. And the favored weapons of her priest is either a glaive or a sword and shield. Followers of Halis often take up to 3 pilgrimages in honor of Halis. The first and most common for those of the cloth to take is to see the city of Geldstein, the birthplace of Halis. Halis also died, and being born there again as a god makes this site sacred. The first temple of Halis was built there. There one will receive a blessing from Halis as you re-solidify your oaths to the defense of life. The second pilgrimage is to honor the path in which Halis walked. It is a pilgrimage that she herself took, and that is to Whitehorn in Avalinde. The White Horn has a tooth of the last dragon that was killed during the Dragon and Elf Wars, and is a temple to the god Eldos, the god that Halis herself followed. Here, one can seek a blessing of Eldos. The third and final pilgrimage is the most daring, and the one that few attempt and fewer still succeed. This pilgrimage is to the unfreezing sea to the north of north. One must endure and cross the frozen wastes to find a pier on the sea. It is said that the water is so cold that anything that touches it freezes immediately and will shatter with very little pressure. From there, one must take a boat to the heart of the sea, where they will find a temple to Salander. In doing so, you will have a chance to encounter the great worm itself. This is a blessing that very few succeed in receiving. Finally, her domains are life, protection, and light. Halis be praised. Halis praise thy name. Well, travelers, dire news for those of the city of Malatin. The goblins had done a number on the sleepy little town. Feeling a little isolated, Lord Eldos and Parthis Morsh assessed the battle plan. The calm has been great to the people of Calidria. It's just made them a little soft. We also discussed the goddess Halis and her origin story. Next time, we will take up the call and follow Jaina, Regos, Dandros, Meg, and Marin to see what they encounter on the road. Will any answer the call for aid? We can only find out. If you wish to support the podcast, give it a rating where you find it. That would mean a lot. A comment, a thumbs up, a star, 5 stars, depending on where you're at. If you want to support a bit more and get the recipes of Calidria in your kitchen, as well as additional lore content, please support me over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/goldenmpn. Signing up will give you access to the Discord server, and I hope we can build a great community over there. I can only do that with you. So won't you join us and join the conversation? If you want to follow me outside the podcast space, you can find me over on Blue Sky at Empress Scald. With that being said, I am Joe Craig, the Empress Scald. Thank you for listening, and remember, you've been scalded.